What's up, real MVPs? Ricky Widmer here, and welcome into the second episode of the MVP Wrestling Podcast. I am joined, as I always am, by my ferocious, the man, the reigning MVP champion, Soapy Muffin.
Hi.
Is that how the champ says hello? Hi.
Yeah.
I'm just calling you the champ. I'm putting the belt on you, Soapy. The reigning, defending, undisputed champion, Soapy Muffin. Really, because you're the only one out of the MVP crew that's actually wrestled before.
I mean, hey, sometimes you got to hold it down for everyone else.
Didn't you, not to put too much information out there, but in your wrestling experience, didn't you break your collarbone wrestling?
Mm-hmm. Took a powerbomb wrong.
Ooh. Soapy's like, yep. Thanks for bringing up bad memories. But this is the, like I said, MVP Wrestling Podcast. Once a month, Soapy and I kind of sit down, talk some wrestling news, whether it's WWE, AEW, all the wrestling, anything that we want to talk about. And today we got a jam-packed show. Before we get into it, 3 things of housekeeping. First off, join the Discord. You want to talk wrestling? We talk wrestling with all the real MVPs. That link down below in the description. Also, thank you to our patrons. Some of our patrons might be watching this podcast a week early. How do you get that? Patreon.com/MVPvids. Become a gold tier patron, and you could watch this a week before everybody else gets to see it. And then last but not least, thank you to our Patreon producers. I know this is for the game shows, but I'm going to say it anyways. Thank you to our Patreon sponsors, Pat Hill and Philly Sean. Fuck it, just going to say it right now. But Soapy, we got a jam-packed show coming into this podcast because we were originally going to talk, how this kind of formed is we're going to talk MJF. Then SummerSlam happened. We're like, okay, we're going to talk Roman Reigns and MJF. And then earlier this week, a little known name. You guys may know him as Brock Lesnar. Don't know if you've ever heard of him before. I hear he's a really big guy. As Dave says, he's the perfect big sweaty man for Vince McMahon. But Brock Lesnar is apparently a free agent. And there have been rumors floating out, Soapy, that apparently UFC has floated up John Bones Jones, that Bellator has floated a big opponent at him, that Tony Khan of AEW has thrown out a contract at him, although, as I'm getting here from C-Scoops, or SEScoops.com, it says Khan said he can't comment right now on the speculation that Brock Lesnar may be headed to AEW. If he's talked to Lesnar, or if he's interested in bringing Lesnar in, Lesnar is now a free agent from WWE, but it's believed that he will be back to work with the company soon. Soapy, I will ask you this. What is your thought about the Brock Lesnar free agent hype? And do you believe he's a free agent, or are you on the side of a certain Chris Jericho who doesn't buy into Brock being an actual free agent?
I fall somewhere in between.
Mm-hmm.
I think there may be some truth to it.
Okay.
Because I do think his contract probably has come to an end. And it may just be kind of that stint that he takes every once in a while of he goes off and does something else, and then 2 or 3 years later comes back to WWE.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think anywhere he goes, I don't think he stays permanently.
Okay.
And it's mostly because Brock realizes he can make big money anywhere he goes.
Mm-hmm.
Goes to UFC, making bank. Bellator, making bank. AEW, definitely making bank because the Khan's got money to throw out for fucking years.
Mm-hmm.
Goes to WWE, Vince got money. Hell, if the Ring of Honor wanted him and he wanted to go to Ring of Honor, boom, there. Japan, boom. It's anywhere Brock would want to go if they'd be willing to take him. Brock's getting the bag. And I threw this out in the Discord before of just with the hype. If he went to AEW, I'd love to see him and Lance Archer go against each other. And it's just because Lance Archer has been built up as such a force. Obviously, some people would be like, oh, he lost to Cody, which means, Brock wouldn't lose to him. But let me point this out. Seth Rollins and Cody are the same height. Well, I don't want to hear a single bit of you know, just because he's smaller. Like, obviously, it's that's more or less me kind of throwing playful jabs at one of the people in the Discord that I had a conversation with.
Yeah. Here's my problem with the AEW hype, because you and I were going to record this. This has been this entire week has been kind of a pushback fest of the day this news broke, we were going to record. And I'm glad we didn't, because I've had time to think about it. We were going to record it yesterday, but I had kind of a shitty day and I wasn't there mentally, and I was having a headache from everything going on that day. So I was like, mental health evening, we'll do it today. And that's what we're at right now. And after thinking about this for some time, I don't know if going to AEW is in the best interest of Brock Lesnar. And the reason why I say that is, lucratively, he is going to be making bank. Chef's kiss if you're coming off on Lesnar's side, because AEW is going to throw the truck at you. There were memes going on about how Tony Khan walked into his dad's office. Hey, Dad, can I talk to you? Yeah, Tony, what's up? Oh, I need you to cut Leonard Fournette. Oh, why, son? Oh, I need money to go throw Brock Lesnar. That was the running joke running through Twitter, that's why the Jaguars cut Leonard Fournette. But I don't think it would be a good idea for Brock Lesnar to go to AEW, only because of the fact, and I know you and I talked about this a little bit, of Brock Lesnar has so much pull at WWE. He's not going to have that at AEW. Like, the Brock-Vince relationship, Brock can do things that if other people did, they would be on the bench and wouldn't be on TV for weeks. And
forever again.
Like, the thing I think of is, so it was the WrestleMania that headlined with Becky, Charlotte, and Ronda, where, of course, me as a fan, I'm like, of course that's going to headline. That's the big match. They want to make it the first ever full female headline for WrestleMania. Well, Brock wasn't having it. Brock's like, well, fuck it. I'm not sitting through this entire shit show unless I'm headlining. I mean shit show like it was a long fucking show. And he's like, fuck it. I'm not sitting through it, to where I remember watching it with Pete and Dave, and they were doing a little skit between Alexa and Hulk Hogan. And then, boom, all of a sudden, Brock's music hits. And Brock and Paul Heyman are walking to the ring. And you see Hogan and Alexa, look at each other like, wait, that's not supposed to happen right now. To where it was basically like Brock said, fuck it, if I'm losing the title, I'm not waiting all night unless I'm headlining. Like, anyone else pulls that, like you mentioned, Soapy, they are no longer on TV ever again. Vince is like, no, you can't do that. But Brock is such a big draw, and Vince likes Brock so much that Brock can do things like that. Like, if he went to AEW, Brock would not be able to pull things like that, because he would not have the rapport with Cody, with Tony Khan, like he does with Vince.
Yeah, and especially because just even an example of something that someone did that was so much less than Brock, Titus O'Neil would have got fired from the fucking company by just, grabbing Vince McMahon's hand.
Mm-hmm.
And we've seen a video of Brock Lesnar literally throwing the fucking championship at Vince McMahon.
Mm-hmm.
There's not many people in the wrestling business who could do that shit to Vince.
Yeah.
And Brock is, numero uno on that list.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that, because with the AEW stuff, I think that's why Brock wouldn't want to go. He doesn't have that pull. He can't basically be like, no, fuck you, I'm not losing to this guy.
Mm-hmm. Well,
because also...
Go ahead. I'm not going to cut you.
Oh, no, I was going to say, because with his opponents, my whole thing is, a thing in wrestling that's really common is the older guys will kind of, at some point, when they realize, okay, I'm at the end, I'm getting near the end of my career, I need to start helping the company more.
Yeah.
The only reason I would ever see Brock start doing that is if Brock literally is like, I have 1 year left. I'm not doing this shit afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
But even at that, it's I know some people would be like, oh, well, he did it with Seth Rollins and Drew, but it's the whole thing is, though, it's because Brock had a title.
Well, in AEW, I'm going to throw this out. AEW, for them, they're in a tricky situation, because Am I saying you wouldn't want Brock Lesnar? No, you'd be a fucking idiot to not want Brock Lesnar. However, there's the side of it where, and this is what I was kind of thinking about after, like, and why I'm glad we didn't do this the night of, because I didn't think about this the night of, is if you're AEW, one of the big things, and I've heard this from Cody in interviews leading up to the debut of AEW, is that we just don't want to be the WWE rejects. We don't want to be just ex-WWE stars. Like, obviously, like the Revival, John Moxley, like those guys they've brought in, Brody Lee, they've brought in guys that they see potential out of, but they don't want to be just anyone getting released from WWE. Like, we haven't seen Rusev on AEW yet. There are some guys that we have not seen.
I mean,
go ahead.
Sorry, I don't mean to cut you off. To be fair, Rusev does have COVID, so.
Well, yeah.
I think it was also, he announced he was going to TNA.
Yeah, I would say
before he got COVID.
Even if he didn't get COVID, Rusev wasn't going to go to AEW. Like, I don't think AEW had interest in Rusev, where TNA did. And there's a part of me that thinks, yes, if you're AEW, you want to sign Brock Lesnar, but if they sign Brock Lesnar, is that the ultimate, like, oh, AEW is just budget WWE? They're just the WWE stars that Vince didn't want. Like, is it going to put a bad image on AEW because you look at it and most of their top guys, except for, like, MJF, Moxley, ex-WWE, Jericho, ex-WWE, Hager, ex-WWE, Cody, ex-WWE, Brody Lee, ex-WWE. Like, would you want another guy coming in who would be a guy that could vie for championships to be an ex-WWE guy? It's like, where's the homegrown talent then?
Well, I mean, to be fair, though, putting the homegrown talent expectation on AEW is extremely unfair because they've been around for less than a year.
True. They haven't been around enough. I'll say that.
Like, places like companies like TNA, Ring of Honor, like New Japan, and WWE included, those are the places that, like, the homegrown talent is, like, that's where it's like, okay, you guys need to show you have that lifeline of, like, we can get this talent, we can do this, like, we can develop these guys into stars.
Yeah.
AEW, I think there's people that, like, obviously their name was more made on the indies, but, like, for instance, people like Darby Allin.
Yeah.
He was a name on the indies. Like, if you watched indie wrestling, you knew who Darby Allin was. But, like, that's the thing. I think right now, if AEW signs, like, if they signed Brock, I don't think they will. I'm going to put that out there now.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think Brock would go there, mostly because they would ask him to actually work.
Yeah.
And Brock wants to do, like, 3 matches a year.
Brock wants to do Brock's schedule, and they'd be like, "No, you're here. You're a part of this locker room."
Yeah. And, well, especially, I don't know if they want Jericho and Brock in the same locker room, because you remember the incident with Brock and Randy Orton, right?
I do not. Fucking story time, Soapy. Story time.
Oh, how do you not remember the whole thing of where it was Brock versus
Basically,
Randy Orton? I don't remember for what title.
I'm saying it, refresh my memory, but also for the listeners out there who might not know or might not remember, we're saying it for them too, but refresh my memory.
Okay, so it was, I believe it was a SummerSlam. It was Brock versus Randy Orton, and it was Brock at one point basically went rogue and just started elbowing Randy Orton in the forehead. Like, not like kayfabe elbows, like actually fucking hitting him.
Yeah.
Like, as hard as he could, and Randy Orton basically had like a stream of blood coming out of his head. And, like, obviously, you know, some people were like, oh, it's kayfabe and all. It's like, no, you could tell, like, that shit wasn't fake with how fast refs got in that ring. And it was, you know, afterwards it was basically, you know, Brock was being a shitlord about it, and Chris Jericho was like, I'm gonna go fucking fight him.
Yeah.
Because it's basically, that's why I also think Chris Jericho's like the best locker room leader in wrestling right now, besides maybe Taker. But also that's just because Taker wants to fight anybody who's an asshole to somebody.
Do you think, I'll ask this then, because of that and because I don't know if Jericho, yet again, not in the AEW locker room, I don't know if Jericho has basically said, hey, I don't want him in this locker room. Do you think that AEW has sent an offer to Brock, or have they not? Because maybe a Jericho has spoken up and said, hey guys, I don't think that's the right decision for AEW.
I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, 100% they've thrown an offer at him. The whole thing is Brock is too big to not take a shot. Like, if I'm going to compare it to basketball, if LeBron James is a free agent, even if you are such a shit team, you may as well just take the shot.
Even if I'm the Minnesota Timberwolves, I'm shooting my shot.
Yeah. If I'm the Timberwolves, if I'm, the Cavs again, no, like, hey, home dog, it worked. Yeah. And it's something that I think with Brock, you shoot the shot, but I think it's one of those things that's more or less of them just kind of like, hey, if it happens, it happens. If not, we don't, no sweat off our back.
Yeah, I just like, for me, and this is the problem I have with AEW, because I will say, every part, like, I've watched a couple AEW shows, and there are guys who are non-WWE guys or girls that I absolutely love from AEW, like MJF, non-WWE guy. I'm trying to think of her name. Fuck, what was her name? Obviously you guys see me with the Penelope shirt on all the time for some of our shows, but fuck, what was her name? And I don't want to look it up.
Britt Baker?
Not Britt Baker. She was, basically, it was such an intrigue for me. She crawled to the ring on all fours. She had contacts in that were like different colors, and like it was one of those things where, like, watching her entrance, I was almost like, I want to compare it to Undertaker, not in the sense of like gonna be a phenom. No, not saying that, but like it was such an, like, her entrance was so ambianced that I was like, they have potential here. They have potential to create a, like, almost like a Undertaker, Fiend, Kane type of entrance where, like, whenever Undertaker entered the ring, obviously the gong was so iconic, but like it was almost like a experience of the smoke, his slow walk to the ring, and everything like that, to where I'm like, they have something really, like, to work here. But like, I think of AEW, and it's time and time again, I get why they put the championship on Jericho and had it between Jericho and Cody to start for that feud, because you needed the championship to mean something, and Jericho did a great job as Le Champion. But like, I think of it, and that's why this week at All Out, I know by the time this hits everyone, All Out would have already happened, but that's why this weekend at All Out, I think they have AEW has a very interesting move that they could do, is if they give the championship to MJF, who has not lost yet, that would be the first title that they'd be putting on somebody not from WWE, because the AEW championship has been on Jericho and then Moxley, and even the TNT championship went from Cody to Brody Lee. And I know people say, well, Ricky, what about the women's championship? There's a reason why I haven't cared about the women's championship, because AEW's women division is, to me, maybe this is just a me thing, is worse than the WWE's women division. And that's obviously WWE's built theirs up more, but I'm saying that because WWE doesn't write the women's division as good as they could. That's kind of where I'm going with that. So like, that's why I think of even All Out, going kind of a little bit AEW here, is that's why this weekend they have a big opportunity to make a statement and say, we're going to put the title on MJF, our first non-WWE guy to have the title.
Yeah, and I think, especially because I'll briefly just touch on the women's division thing. Mm-hmm. I think it was the problem with it right off the start, because it's gotten a little better, just like a little bit. Like, it's inching in the right direction. The problem with the AEW's women division was, and I know some people, like, I'm not going to say, like, oh, people are going to get pissed off at me for saying it. Mm-hmm. They brought in such a specific type of female wrestler wrestling that was not popular in America. Yeah. Like, it was strictly like, you only really saw women's wrestlers do it in Japan, which I think is like Joshi wrestling, I think is what it's called.
Yeah.
The whole thing is now, since they've brought in more people, like, obviously, you know, Like there's Nyla Rose, Britt Baker, Penelope Ford. Like there's all these like new or like I don't want to make it sound like oh like no one cares about Japanese stars because people do because like there are people in America who love New Japan. Hell, I like New Japan.
It's just a different style.
Yeah, and you have to find that good mix of styles because like for instance, even with places like Lucha Underground, there's a good mixture of lucha wrestling and non-lucha wrestling.
Yeah, well, it's kind of like I think of here's the reference I get for it is like when Adam Blampier put out his like how would he book Shinsuke Nakamura when he talked about Shinsuke even. He's like Shinsuke, the match against Jinder Mahal, which was a textbook WWE match, no wonder it was shit because that's not a match for Shinsuke. You got to put him in a match like the match he had against Sami Zayn at I think it was NXT TakeOver Chicago when he debuted because Sami Zayn could cater more to the hard style that Shinsuke was used to from Japan.
Yeah. And the problem with doing that, and like I think that's where the integration of Japanese wrestlers kind of gets hard in the American style of wrestling, or at least with American companies, is not a lot of people can work that style.
Yeah.
Like obviously we saw the AJ Shinsuke matches, and they were great. Obviously, but beside Dick Kick City,
Dick Kick City, baby, Dick Kick City.
Yeah, like beside all of those, like they were good matches.
Yeah,
and it's because AJ's worked in New Japan. It's a lot of people in WWE. They're just basically like they're either talent that was brought in from really small indie companies, people from Ring of Honor, or people from like TNA, and that's one of the things of you have to be such. I don't want to say like a gifted performer. You have to know that style for it to work. Like obviously, Ring of Honor has like they have crossover events with New Japan, which I think is what I think it's called like Supercard. I think is what their crossover event is.
I think you're right. That sounds familiar. I think I've heard Pete and Dave talk about Supercard before.
Yeah. Obviously, if I'm wrong, someone can correct me because they definitely will and call me a big idiot, or as I would word it, a big dum-dum. But I think that's where the problem with the women's division came in, and obviously once you insert more of like the Americanized wrestlers, like more American fans are going to be like, okay, that's a style I know, because then you can try to mix and match that of like, oh, Joshi wrestling versus more a technical style, and that can get people involved, and especially because then sorry, that was a long tangent. I didn't even realize how long that was.
No, go ahead.
Or how far off I got.
That's the point of a podcast, Soapy. We're just having a conversation. Like we've gone away from Brock. I don't care. Good conversation.
But yeah, it was. I just want to get it back to the stuff with MJF because I'd fucking love to gush about MJF for the rest of my life.
Their titles and stuff. Like I feel like they would really be making a statement if this Saturday at All Out they gave it to MJF, kept his undefeated streak going, and having Jon Moxley put him over to be the first non-WWE guy to have the title.
Yeah, and especially I think it's MJF is one of those people that he should have the title.
He's such
like in my opinion, yeah, he's one of the, and arguably, which I've said this multiple fucking times, I think he's the best heel in wrestling. And like honestly, if I'm going to be brutally honest, I don't think it's close. I think there is such a gap. Like obviously, I know some people would be. I think it's Evil in New Japan. I think he counts as a heel, and a lot of people like him. My whole thing is with MJF. It's like. He has that hateable personality. Everything about MJF is hateable. But I'm just like, as a person who kind of understands the business, I'm like, holy fuck, I love him because he's good. But I'm like, fuck, I hate him because he's like an obnoxious prick.
So, some of the best heels, because there was a while, so WWE, there was a while I got out of wrestling. And I haven't, I came back to it. The New Orleans WrestleMania was my first, I'm back into wrestling. So, that's the reference point I'm using. Since that time, the best heels that I have watched. The promo he cut this week on AEW, where I know you didn't see it, Soapy, so I'm going to spoil it a little bit, is Moxley wins against the lawyer for MJF. And then MJF comes out with, I don't know his name, the big bruiser guy. From his group.
Wardlow.
Wardlow comes out first, starts fucking up Moxley. Then MJF comes out with his walker, tosses the walker away, takes off the neck brace, and then starts taking off the jacket. He takes off his watch. He throws his watch to the side, unbuttons his shirt to where he's basically got his undershirt and the dress pants he's wearing on. And he just brutalizes Jon Moxley. And it's basically the promo he's cutting is he's talking to the fans, but he's really talking to us. This is what you want? This is what you want? And then he like puts out his pinky for them to put the big ring on it. And he, bam, hits Moxley over the head with it. And he goes, I'm going to give you what you guys want. And it's like, oh my God. Like, so great of a heel. Like, the only other heels that I am like, they were great heels. Tommaso Ciampa heel is one of the best heels in NXT. I do not care. And it's not even something of like, you hate Tommaso Ciampa. It's one of those things of like, I'm scared of him. I'm talking about the Tommaso Ciampa that like came out to no music and would like hold the belt and call it Goldie. Like that's the heel Tommaso that I'm talking about. The one that would just brutalize you and would not care. The other one that I'm going to throw out there too, that this was more on an annoying sense, but for me, she did her job well and she got me to hate her because I don't hate her anymore because she's no longer a heel, was I think Carmella, after the like Asuka lost to Charlotte, I think Asuka was one of the better women's heels that we have seen in the last few years.
Yeah, and it's one of those things of with, especially because I will say the one reason why, like, I honestly say, in my personal opinion,
yeah,
I think Asuka's the best women's wrestler in WWE right now.
Yeah, well, that's because Becky's away, Charlotte's away, right?
Well, I mean, I would say more or less if it's like even with them there, I think Asuka's better than them. I think it's Asuka's biggest weak point, and I know like we've talked about like them cutting promos in Japanese and liking it. My whole thing is like, how much is that going to connect with fans?
Yeah,
because
Asuka's
for instance, like I think
Asuka's different though. I think she's different only because of the fact of I feel like it doesn't matter what she is saying. It's how she says it that comes across. Like, she is one of the few Japanese wrestlers I feel doesn't need a translator.
Yeah, I mean, personally for me, I think Io is probably the best Japanese talker in the company.
Yeah.
And
well, they've just like, written her right.
Yeah. Because I think, and the reason why I'm saying, like, I think it's going to be hard for fans to connect is people want to know what you're saying. That's the thing. I feel like that's what's put like a major cap on Shinsuke. What may have kept them from, or what may have stopped them from pushing Asuka so far up to the fucking moon that like she would have been like Becky Peak the Man gimmick height, is the fact of the promos. It's something where, especially like in a Japanese audience, obviously they understand what she's saying.
Yeah.
In an American audience, it's like, okay, you can put energy behind it. We want to know what you're saying.
And the thing that I think that Asuka does that Shinsuke doesn't is if you're going to give a promo that is not English, you have to, then to me, it's your body language. That's what you've got to sell to me because, and that's why maybe I like Asuka's better than like Shinsuke's is because I feel like with her intensity, with her body language, while she's giving the promos, I feel that Asuka is very good at, with her body language, demonstrating what emotion she wants you to feel from it. To where some of the times with her promos, I don't need to know what she's exactly saying because her body is telling me what she's saying. Or like what she wants to get across with the mood of it, I'll say.
Yeah, I mean, it's like obviously at that point, we'll just be arguing semantics, like back and forth, basically.
Some people like it, some people don't. It's okay.
Yeah, like I don't hate Asuka's promos. It's just my whole thing is I feel like Asuka would massively benefit from having a speaker for her because, like, obviously she can be the energy of it, but it's like it does tie into the fact of some people. I'm not trying to be an asshole when I bring this up because there are some people who just don't like listening to Japanese promos. There may be people who just don't. They're just like, why don't you just speak English?
Yeah, I mean,
Like, obviously, Asuka's not the best English speaker, and especially like if you look at her YouTube channel,
Mhm.
a lot of times she opts to speaking Japanese because it's easier for her.
see,
And like, I'm not gonna shit on people for that.
mm, I, you know what? I would shit on somebody for saying, "Why don't you speak English?" Because it's one of those things where it's like, not everyone has to speak English. Like, there are some. It depends on how the character is written, and does it work that way. Like, I get that it's like, well, I can't understand what you're saying, but it's like, it depends on how the character is written. Like, you bring up Io Shirai. Io Shirai's promos are so good because I don't know if it's because they're pre-recorded and they're pre-recorded in like an anime style that like Dave even said, "Oh, I love the anime like vibes I'm getting from this." But like with that, because they're pre-recorded, they've set them up exactly what they want. You get the subtitles underneath what Io is saying.
Yeah, it's. I don't want to say I'd shit on someone for doing that because I get where they're coming from. Of where it's you're in a English speaking country in an English speaking company. I get it. I personally don't agree with it, but like I think at the same time it's a fair criticism because especially like if you think about it, that's the reason that what's his fucking that's one of the reasons
Shinsuke?
why I think it was like the well no like Shinsuke, but like I'm talking about like people who straight up had like their careers like
Oh,
halted completely, like the original Sin Cara.
yeah.
Like it was Vince told them like learn how to speak English.
Lucha House Party in general. I don't think I've heard any
Yeah.
of them talk English.
I mean, Kalisto speaks English. They all speak English. It's just they're kind of more or less of Lucha House Party. Basically, is kind of a joke. And I'm not saying that as like a way to take a shot at Lucha House Party, but
like you look at
like
like Eddie Guerrero, R.I.P. He was really good at like mixing the two together.
yeah,
Like,
and that's what WWE aims to do.
He could speak English, but like there was the part like I never forget during like the Dominic feud. It's like, "I'm your father, mijo. I'm your father." It's like you're linking both of them together, where it's like, okay, like that fits, that works.
Yeah, and especially because I mean, obviously, like I know some people may just interpret me saying like you kind of need to. I'm trying to figure out how to word this in a way that like I just don't come off as like a xenophobic asshole. Because like it's something that like I'm really just like tap dancing a line at this point.
I mean, it's so here's what I'm gonna say because like you're tap dancing around. It's like the thing you gotta realize is it all comes down to, yes, it's an American company, but maybe it's because I think of wrestling as a show. Think of it like your normal sitcom or cartoon that you would watch. Like, yes, Asuka's an actual person. She has her own Twitter. The kayfabe thing now is broken because of how, like, social media broke that, where if you tried to start The Undertaker now, it wouldn't have the same effect as back then. Because, like, The Undertaker in his Last Ride documentary, he even said, like, people would come up to him and ask him, "Are you really dead?" Like, that's how, I want to say, stupid we were, and that's how much we believed it. Like, are you really dead? To where, yes, that is broken, but like, I see the wrestlers as characters. Like, they're actors playing. Like Seth Rollins, his Messiah is a character. That's not who Seth Rollins is outside of WWE. Now, sometimes wrestlers do play characters that are very close to how they are on the outside world, but it's just, yeah, maybe it's because I see them more as characters on a TV show rather than, oh, this is real life, you have to do this. It's, like I said, how the characters are written that will help whether what they're speaking or what kind of a character they're playing. Is it more of a vocal driven character? Is it more of a body language character? Like Undertaker didn't have to say anything. He was a man of few words because his presence and his body language spoke for him to where when he did talk, it was meaningful. And like, that's what I think we just have to treat the same way with the non-English wrestlers on rosters.
Yeah. I mean, because once again, like I said, we're basically just going to be arguing semantics because it's because I view it as like, I think in America wise, you're only going to get as far as you are able to talk. Because, like, for instance, I'm going to be brutally fucking honest. You can be the best goddamn wrestler in the world. No one's going to care unless you're a good talker.
Yeah, I mean...
And my whole thing with Asuka is, like, she brings energy. No one's going to deny that. But, like I was saying, along with needing to understand what she's saying, if you just have her start speaking Japanese, like, you're alienating such a large part of the audience to the point of where it's like, okay, just put a mouthpiece with her.
So your answer is give her a manager, or give her a tag team partner that,
or put subtitles.
Okay.
Do something.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's just because...
Do you think they don't do subtitles out on the ring because it, like, WWE thinks that'd be weird? Where it's like, if it's a pre-cut thing like Io Shirai underwater, that doesn't seem out of place.
Yeah. Well, especially because, like, with promos and stuff like that, it's like, okay, like, obviously this shit's edited unless Io Shirai's teleporting around.
Yeah. No.
But it's just with doing, and obviously, because, like I said, I basically sound like a fucking broken record, just repeating myself every time. Having someone who can speak English, it brings it to I don't want to say next level, because, like, obviously, like I said, the original Sin Cara, basically they told him, learn English or you're fired. Did learn English? Fired him.
Yeah.
The second one, didn't want to learn English? Fired him. I feel Andrade, if he was paired with Zelina Vega, would be out of the company.
Yeah.
It's something of... I think
it works, but like Andrade and Zelina work, where it's like, I'm not saying like every person who doesn't speak English has to not speak English. It's just, yet again, how is the character written? Does it work on screen? Does it work with the audience? Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't.
Yeah. And especially I feel with Asuka, I almost kind of feel like she's like a divisive character, of where it's like, some people like the fact that, like, she does goofy shit in the ring. Like, she does goofy shit.
Like,
there are people who don't like that.
And stuff.
Yeah. Like, for instance, I'm going to be brutally honest. I think she's one of the best female wrestlers in the company.
Yeah.
I really don't like the character. I like the fact that she is such a good wrestler that she can make me look past the character. I personally don't like that, like, she dances around and does all that type of stuff. Because I remember what she was before that. Of where it's like, I'd have no problem if she kept like her original gimmick of where it was like the undefeated streak, like all seriousness, like, no, like, she is going to whoop your ass if she gets in that ring.
Don't bring up the streak. Don't get me on that rant, Soapy, because although it was right when I was coming back into wrestling, that shit pissed me off to no end. Yeah,
it's with her character, like, back then, I was fine with her not speaking English.
Yeah.
Because it's like, okay, like, you have no idea what she's saying. She could basically say it to you, like, in Japanese, and none of us would know, like, I'm going to fucking murder you. And we'd all just be like, oh, silly old Asuka, we don't know what you're saying. But, like, now it's like, okay, you're supposed to be the good guy. I kind of want to understand what you're saying. Yeah. Because, like, you could be given this, like, promo of, like, oh, I'm doing it for you guys. If you can't understand it, no one cares.
Yeah, and kind of to reel things back and kind of put a kibosh on our original topic before we move on is Brock Lesnar. Just a final verdict. Well, and you laugh. This is what I love about these wrestling podcasts, Soapy, and doing them with you, is we just had a conversation about something. And I know that some people out there, it's not going to jive with them, and that's fine, but, like, the whole reason why I was like, you and I need to do a wrestling podcast is you and I will start talking about something. We'll talk about that for a little bit, but then it'll bring up something else. Like, I did not expect to talk about Asuka today, but we did.
True.
And, like, I don't know about you. I don't know about you out there listening and watching. Like, I felt like it was a good conversation. I know there was times where, Soapy, you're like, well, we're just going to be on one end, and it's like, we're not trying to sway someone to the other end. We were just having a conversation, and that stemmed off of AEW, and that stemmed off of Brock Lesnar. But I know someone's going to be like, you never finished the Brock Lesnar thing. So I wanted to ask, at the end of the day, what do you think's happening with Brock? Going back to WWE, going to MMA, going to AEW?
MMA, and he's going to UFC. Because that's where he's probably going to get the biggest bag. Like, obviously, AEW would offer him more, but Brock has to actually show up for it. I don't think I think he's taking his hiatus from WWE,
Okay.
especially because I don't know if Brock actually cares about COVID.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Well,
that's my main thing of like,
Dave said right now he's technically trapped in Canada
yeah.
because of the
So
travel restrictions and stuff.
yeah, so it's gonna be fun to see how that turns out.
I'm gonna go on a different end, and this is from a couple hours ago. It's from earlier today on Thursday. Take it as you may. That Dave Meltzler has noted that on his Wrestling Observer Radio podcast that Lesnar is not interested in MMA. If he were, he would have entered the USDA testing pool to be eligible to fight during the summer and would have been tested 6 months ago before fighting. I look at this and I go, okay, is he interested in fighting? I would put MMA over AEW. I don't think he goes to AEW. I don't think they have a chance at getting him. I think if he does go to MMA, it's a fight with John Bones Jones, because that would bring in fucking Mucho Dolores. Here's what I think. I think this is kind of planned by WWE. Yes, I think there's some realism that his contract is actually up, but I think at the end of the day, Brock Lesnar comes home, and when he comes back, they're going to play into this and have a feud between him and Roman. Because I think it makes the most sense to, when he comes back, having a feud between him and Roman, because Paul Heyman has recently switched over to being a Roman Reigns guy. That's kind of where I'm sitting on this one. Because I know UI and Demon, Philly Sean, have talked about them teaming the two up. I don't know. The more I think about it, I don't know how you team them up rather than just have Brock come in and be the next challenger for Roman, whenever that is.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we can get into that next.
Yeah.
But I think it's Brock's probably coming back. I think honestly for me, I think they put them on separate brands.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they put Brock and Roman on the same brand, and it's just because every time they do that, it kind of gets really fucking boring.
Depends on what Fox wants, though. It seems like to me that whatever Fox wants, Fox gets.
Well, it's also, you got to remember, Fox wanted Brock, but they didn't get Brock because they also got The Fiend and Roman. So WWE was like, no, we need somebody on Raw.
Well, wasn't that Brock was like, no, fuck that. I want to be on Paul's on Heyman. Like, that was when Raw was Heyman's show. Wasn't that more of like, no, I want to be on Heyman's show. Fuck it, I'm not showing up. I think that was a Brock thing. Of Brock saying, no, I ain't fucking showing up to SmackDown anymore.
Well, I mean, to be fair, it's also, if Brock said that to Fox, they'd probably just be, all right, fuck off, go. We don't need you.
No, I think he said it to Vince.
And then
that's why
Vince
changed.
brought it up. Yeah, well, because then if Vince brought it up to Fox, they'd also basically would tell Vince to fuck off.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm not trying to be an asshole when I say that. It's Fox doesn't give a single fuck what Brock wants. Because especially, if you notice, they really tried to stack SmackDown.
Yeah, no, they did. And I think that was a Fox move. Fox wanted the better wrestlers for more ratings. I totally think that it was Fox influenced, and WWE was like, whatever you say, we'll do. Because it's a new it's basically that new girlfriend that is like, I want to do this, I want to do that, and you're so worried that if you say no, she'll leave you, that you're like, fine, whatever you want to do, that's what we're going to do. Like, that's how I felt like that relationship started between WWE and Fox.
Yeah, I mean, there's a very good chance that that's how it went. But it's also, I think at the same time, like, I think they basically would just tell Vince, like, no, you tell Brock, get his happy ass over to SmackDown. We don't give a fuck what he wants. If Brock leaves, too fucking bad. Like, I think it's one of those things, like, Brock may have pull with Vince. Brock ain't got shit on Fox.
And
especially because then at that point, that also goes from Fox to Disney.
Yeah.
Brock ain't got shit on Disney.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, too, it just puts Vince then in a bad situation because Brock won't give a shit. Brock's going to do what Brock wants to do, and if you're not happy with that, fuck it. It's not his problem. But the thing I want to ask is, last thing we'll talk about is heel Roman Reigns. Blew up the Storm. at SummerSlam he debuted, and then at Payback a week later, he basically cashed in his Money in the Bank contract to win the Universal title off of The Fiend. Soapy, what are your thoughts about Roman Reigns being a Paul Heyman heel now? And where do you think they go with this, with the Roman Reigns character?
I fucking absolutely love it. Because, like I told you before we started, like I even said, when they broke up the Shield, I thought Roman should have been the one to turn. Okay. And the reason why is, like, I took him more as, like, a believable heel. Because it's like, Roman, I feel, could legitimately just beat the shit out of anybody.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think it was, like, I understand doing it with Rollins because you can kind of turn him into a chicken shit heel. Of, like, he was hiding behind his, like, goons and everything that he had. It's like, okay, that's fine. It's like, I just feel Roman, to me, is a more believable heel. Because it's like, Roman, like, what are you going to do if you, if you tell Roman no? Like, if you look at his character, as a good guy, it's like, Roman was just, like, stoic. He wasn't, like, the underdog at all. You know, the big dog's not the underdog.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of the thing I think should be sort of a face thing of, like, you're kind of an underdog. Obviously, there's exceptions of, like, with Drew McIntyre. Mm-hmm. Drew McIntyre is, like, that strong baby face. Of, like, I don't think Roman pulled that off well, because they tried to make him that weird mixture of, like, he's strong, but he's also the underdog in every feud because he gets his ass handed to him every week.
Well, it's the thing that I love most about this heel character for Roman Reigns is I feel like out of anybody, Roman Reigns needed a different gimmick where it's like he's the only one that basically, like, Seth left, Dean left, now he's Jon Moxley, to where it's like basically Roman was the Shield even without the Shield. Like, he still kept the vest on, and it was just like, it was one of those things where WWE tried to force him down our throats, and then that's where fans were like, boo, boo, boo. And I loved it because it's like, holy shit, this is a different Roman. Just that alone got me excited. And I feel like putting the title immediately on Roman, there's a little bit behind the stage of why I feel like they did what they did, which I'll get into in a hot second, but I don't think it's bad that they put the title on Roman. And I know that, like, Philly Sean has made fun of, like I even mentioned, the Money in the Bank contract with how they did it at Payback, but I don't necessarily hate how they did everything because, first off, I feel like they had The Fiend beat Braun at SummerSlam is because the backstage news is saying that Vince McMahon is basically done with Braun Strowman, that he's not happy with Braun Strowman. Braun Strowman's no longer going to be champion. Obviously, he lost at SummerSlam. And with The Fiend, they could use him as a transitional champion. And the way they did it kind of made everyone look strong. Braun didn't look like a bitch because he basically went toe-to-toe with The Fiend before Roman Reigns stepped in. The Fiend the same way went toe-to-toe with Braun before Reigns stepped in. And Reigns just basically, hey, I'm a heel. I'm taking advantage of the situation. Plays into basically a Paul Heyman move in my mind. Like that you can say that Paul Heyman was in his ear, like, hey, this is in the best interest for this. And Soapy, this is going to air for So for patrons, this is going to air before SmackDown on September 4th. For everyone else, this is after September 4th. So this might be moot for the people live. We'll actually see if this was true. But according to CageSideSeats.com of the SB Nation brand, there are three segments, leaked out or announced for this week's episode of SmackDown. Do you want to know what two of them are?
Sure.
The first one is Roman Reigns with Paul Heyman will address the WWE Universe. So I'm assuming they're going to open the show with Roman Reigns and they're going to talk like basically Universal Champion and address what's going on. This, I think, is going to be the headline of the show. They're going to have a fatal four-way match to determine Reigns' first challenger for the Universal title on September 27th at Clash of Champions 2020. Here are the 4 people in that match, Soapy. And I'm just going to say them, and I'm going to let you give who you would want to win. If you were Vincent Kennedy McMahon, who's winning this fatal 4-way and taking on Reigns at Clash of Champions? You've got Big E, Sheamus, King Corbin, Matt Riddle.
Damn, dude. I mean, I'm saying no Corbin because I'm so goddamn all right,
for me, it's between 2. It's between 2.
I'd probably say Biggie and Riddle.
Yep.
Between those 2 for me.
Mm-hmm.
Well, because I'll give my reasoning for not wanting the other 2.
Okay.
So with Sheamus, I think Sheamus has passed that point of his career of needing a top title.
Yeah.
And with Corbin, I gotta specify this before I say it. I actually fucking like Corbin.
Mm-hmm.
I'm one of the 2 human beings in existence who actually likes Corbin.
But we've already seen him feud with Roman. They did the whole dog
500
thing.
times.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm not fucking having them do dog food again.
Mm-hmm.
So it's also one of those things of where it's like the reason I don't know how I feel about them doing Big E or doing Matt Riddle is that pushing one of those 2 to the top way too quickly? Because with Big E, I think you can have his rise to the top, or obviously if they're gonna do a rise to the top with him, I don't exactly know. I don't know what direction they're gonna go with his solo run.
Yeah.
Obviously this shows they may want him to be a top guy, but I don't think you try to put him in a situation where oh, you give him a shot at the main title because then what? You have him lose to Roman? Because I don't think you take the title off Roman right after he gets it. And I think it's too early with Big E because I don't think they've built him up as a credible threat to Roman yet.
Yeah. That's why I think it's going to be Matt Riddle.
Yeah. And even at that, even with Riddle, I also don't think he's that credible of a threat. And obviously we know everything from NXT, but the main roster doesn't care about that. It's the only stuff we've seen with Riddle on the main roster was he lost to AJ, and I think he beat Baron Corbin.
Yeah, he beat Corbin.
Yeah, so he's 1-1 on the main roster.
I think he also beat Shorty G as well, Chad Gable.
Oh man!
Or did that end in or I think that ended in a no finish because Corbin came and spoiled it.
Yeah. So, it's obviously I know knowing the stuff in NXT, I want him to have that shot. But at the same time, it's also to the people who don't watch NXT, they may just be like, "Why the fuck is Riddle getting this?" Because he hasn't proven anything. Obviously, I didn't think you'd have him beat AJ. I think AJ is best used when he's a champion. Because obviously, at that point, that's when it's okay, the spotlight's on AJ, and that's where he thrives. Obviously, I think it's... I honestly just didn't like any of the options there to begin with, but I think it would be Riddle, but I think they have Riddle lose, and it's just because, I think they're going to have him look strong, but I don't think you make Roman look weak in his first championship defense. That's what I'm worried about, is Roman going to look really weak as a champion, or are they going to make Riddle look really weak by getting absolutely shit on by Roman?
Because, so Clash of Champions, just to say, they've kind of built this show up as kind of every championship will be defended on that night. Last year's had basically 11 matches, 10 of them were championship matches, with one being a no DQ match between Eric Rowan and Roman Reigns.
Man, what a fucking match.
With Luke Harper, by the way. Luke Harper was there at the time. But every other one was basically you're going to go ahead and defend the title. Here's my problem with either of those. The reason why I say Matt Riddle is I feel like the storyline could be, because my problem with pushing Matt Riddle that far to the top is I feel like Matt Riddle should be an IC title holder before getting pushed up to the main card. And I feel like the storyline that you do with that is that, oh, I'm the bro that runs the show. And basically it's like, fuck you. Like, you haven't earned anything. And kind of, it's a match that storyline wise, you can basically have it be Roman and Paul Heyman putting Matt Riddle in his place. Where from the get-go, it's been Matt Riddle shooting to the stars, where a loss against Roman isn't going to be a bury of Matt Riddle. It's basically going to be that we're going to give you a hint of what's there. We're going to make you lose so that when he eventually does become a champion, if they build it upright, it means so much more because he wasn't just handed a title. He had a shot. He lost it. He had to go down and basically go back to the IC title and the mid card and fight around, and basically, like, that's where I think that I would go with that. Is you've had it way too easy. I'm going to shut you down right here. Big E's the other one of, like, I would love to see that, but I don't see Big E beating Roman Reigns at Clash of Champions. And I feel like Big E would have more to lose from a loss than Matt Riddle would against Roman Reigns. Here's the other thing I would do is, so the rest of the pay-per-views, Clash of Champions is in September. Then in November, you have Survivor Series, which Survivor Series is just champions versus champions. SmackDown versus Raw versus NXT, all that shit. TLC will be interesting because do you have the title on that? And if so, what it is. But I feel like I wouldn't... If I'm going to have Big E go for the title, it's I have Big E win the Rumble. That's how I would do. Like, if I was going to write a storyline of Big E going for the Universal title, I would have it, we get used to him as a singles competitor from now until January. He wins the Rumble and boom, challenges Roman Reigns for it at WrestleMania. So he could have that Kofi moment like Kofi had a couple years ago.
Yeah, and I think doing things along that line with Big E, my main worry with how they're going to handle his singles push is, like, are we basically just going to get a mirror push of Kofi? Yeah, that's what I'm worried of, is we're just going to get the same push again. And, like, obviously, don't get me wrong, I want Big E to succeed, and I liked Kofi Mania, but it's like, does it have the same impact twice?
Mm-hmm.
And it's also with the stuff of him going against Roman, I don't think you push Big E that quickly. I think you have to go after AJ.
Yeah,
I think it...
Go ahead, finish. I'm cutting you off.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, it's like, I think you have Big E go after AJ. And obviously, like, if you want to have him beat AJ, and like, I think that one just mainly depends on whoever you want to be IC champion.
Yeah.
Because then if you want to have a feud between AJ and Roman, you know, that opens up the door for that.
Well, I mean, right now the IC title is Jeff Hardy.
Oh, yeah, I'm actually dumb as fuck. Yeah, completely ignore me.
Jeff Hardy.
I don't know why.
You were mentioning AJ, and I was like, I think Jeff Hardy won it off him. Yeah, it's Jeff Hardy right now.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. So basically, this just shows I don't watch SmackDown, apparently.
It's okay. It's okay. You're missing a couple shows. It's all right. Here, kind of to end things, here's what I would do. Matt Riddle wins on SmackDown on the 4th. He goes against Roman Reigns, loses against Roman Reigns, has to go back and, okay, I'm not ready yet to be a champion. There is work here to be done, and he has to fight for that. We build up Big E as a singles competitor. We don't have to put him anywhere near the title race right now. Probably put him in feuds with different people or put him in the IC title race. But you got to pick either Big E or Matt Riddle. I don't want both of them in that IC title race. At the Rumble, I would personally not put Big E as the winner. What I would do, and this would be the perfect storm for me, is Brock is ready to come back or able to come back at that time. Brock wins the Rumble. And here's the dilemma you could put with it. Who is Brock going to choose? Does he want a rematch with the guy who took his WWE championship? Or does he want to go after Roman Reigns because Roman's now a Paul Heyman guy? Like, you could have it to where, and this is me fantasy booking, I get that, but Brock Lesnar comes back, like, you know how Edge came in at the Rumble last year?
Yeah.
Brock hits. You hear doo-doo-doo-doo, doo-doo-doo-doo, and it's like, holy shit, Brock Lesnar is back, WWE, holy shit, we thought he was a free agent. He wins the Rumble, and at that time, it's a basic decision of who the fuck is he going to go after? Does he want a rematch with Drew at WrestleMania? Does he want to go after Roman Reigns? That's how I would write it.
Yeah, so for me, personally, what I would do, I wouldn't have Brock win the Rumble. And the reason I wouldn't do that is just because I think at this point, it's how many times can you have Brock hold the championship and fans still care? That's my main thing of, like, we've seen, like, obviously TV ratings say otherwise of when Brock's on TV, it's big money. Like, a lot of people watch. But once again, how often is Brock on TV? I think, personally, what I would do is, like, let's say Drew somehow keeps his title. I'm saying somehow, like, I want him to lose, even though I don't. Like, let's say Drew keeps his title and Roman obviously still has his. I think you have Keith Lee win it.
Okay.
I think you pay off to the fact of, like, they've built up the fact of, like, Keith Lee's going to be a big deal on the main roster. But obviously, like, I know a little bit ago I talked about, like, oh, you know, maybe not shooting Matt Riddle to the moon. And I'm talking about Keith Lee after a year being called up gets the Royal Rumble win.
But Keith Lee,
but
Matt Riddle,
before,
like...
yeah. Like, they're both big names, but it's like, we've seen they gave Keith Lee the rub at that one SummerSlam of where him and Roman fist bumped, and he damn near beat Roman, the top guy in the company.
And they gave him the rub of Brock Lesnar giving Keith Lee respect at the Rumble.
Yeah. Like, if that doesn't show that man's about to be fucking launched to another galaxy, I don't know what does.
I love it.
Like I was about to make a comparison, and I realized, I'm like, it would kind of sound dumb.
Yeah.
I was going to say he could be what Mark Henry was supposed to be. Because with Mark Henry, they always had intentions of putting the WWE title on him. He just never could stay healthy.
Yeah, good point. Because the whole
like,
thing,
obviously, I know
the whole thing with Mark Henry that's different is like
sexual dark chocolate.
No, not that. It's he had the world's strongest man gimmick, and I like the thing I love about the Mark Henry story is how he basically people while he was in WWE were like, you're not the world's strongest man, blah, blah, blah. And he basically went to Vince and said, hey, I got to go compete in the strongest man competition because I have to prove that I'm the world's strongest man. And basically, I thought
it was he won it and then came to WWE.
He did, but he had to, like, reprove himself again. Like, he had been out of it for so long that people questioned him to where it's like, you haven't been here. And, like, he always tells the story of, like, he went to Vince and was like, I got to go win this. And Vince kind of said the joke, but I don't think he was joking of like, well, yeah, you better go win it because otherwise there's no room for you here because we don't have room for the second strongest man.
True.
And that's when he went ahead and won it. And it's like right there was the beginning of the big push for Mark Henry of the world's strongest man officially.
Yeah. And obviously, I know some people are going to just be like, oh, you're only comparing them, you know, for obvious reasons. I don't want to state the extremely obvious part.
We're not. I'll just say that we're not.
And that's not what I'm intending for. It's like, it's that fact of like, okay, here we go. Like, shooting to the moon. Like, he's going. There ain't nothing you can do to stop him. Like, obviously, I'm not going to speak it into existence, but, like, I don't want something to happen to Keith Lee.
Kind of like Karrion Kross on NXT. There was only one thing that could stop that, and it happened.
Yeah. And I don't want that to happen to Lee. The thing, and especially because it's one of those things, like, I think Keith Lee is the perfect mixture of what you want in a wrestler. He's a good in-ring worker, obviously. Has he hurt people? Yeah. Once again, it's also, we don't know what the hell hurt Karrion Kross.
He's a great talker, too.
Yeah. he's a great talker. Like, he's a lovable personality. Like, when you see him in interviews, it's like he's humbled. Yeah. Especially, he's the perfect baby face.
Yeah, no, he is. Like
people love cheering for him.
And you
obviously before they fucked his theme up.
And you mentioned it's great how he's on Raw, because Raw is like, name me a baby face on Raw that's not Dominic Mysterio.
Damn it.
Like
that was about to be.
Name me a baby face that's not Dominic. You can't.
True.
I mean, now he is, but like my point is, Raw is the land of heels.
Yeah, and especially because it's like every fucking stable that's there is a heel stable.
Mm-hmm. The Messiah,
if you think about it,
the Hurt Business,
yeah, the Messiah,
Zelina Vega's crew.
Yeah, I think Keith Lee literally fits like a glove, because it's like how before I kept saying like, oh, the Undisputed Era, like if they got called up, I'd have no fucking idea where they'd go, because they don't like originally I kept saying like, oh, Raw, and I thought about it, I'm like, there's way too many factions, like someone would have to move.
Yeah,
I mean, hell, unless they wait to call them up till after the Messiahs are done with.
Who
knows? But that's besides the point.
I've got one last question for you before we wrap this up.
I may have one last answer.
Off the cuff prediction here. If you had to choose between one of these two things happening at Clash of Champions, what would you choose? Otis cashing in the Money in the Bank championship to get his team the SmackDown champions. Or the other thing that we have kind of hinted at that might happen is, does he give the briefcase to Mandy Rose to cash in for a championship? Whether that is a thing of like the SmackDown championship, or if that's a Mandy Rose is now a swerve and now she's on Raw and cashes in for the Raw championship.
I think it has to be the tag team, and the only reason is it's the male's Money in the Bank.
Well,
like that's the whole thing it's built up as.
I just look at it. If you're going to build a feud between Sasha and Bayley, you're not taking the belt away from that. And I don't see them splitting up Otis and Mandy, so she's not going to switch shows.
Well, yeah. So I think it's going to be Otis hitches that in. The only thing is that we haven't seen Tucker in God only knows how long.
We saw him. He's probably about 3 weeks ago.
All right, cool. Yeah, apparently I just am not fucking watching Raw or SmackDown. Apparently,
it's backstage stuff. Like, remember when Mandy got her hair cut by Sonya?
Oh, yeah.
Tucky was there.
Okay.
It's just we haven't seen him in a ring in a long time.
Yeah, well, probably because they have so much other shit going on. They can't fit every tag team in.
Yeah, but it popped to my mind when we were talking about the Royal Rumble and stuff. It's like, when does Otis cash in that Money in the Bank?
Yeah.
When does he
I also have one last little thing.
Go ahead.
It's my Retribution idea thing that I had.
Are they going to drop it? Go ahead. Let me know what you think. Put it out there for the nation.
There's a very strong chance they drop it, because like it has such little interest. Unless this is fantasy booking Soapy coming in.
Go ahead.
You pair them with Roman Reigns and Paul Heyman. That you have it that basically it's kind of, because I put it in the Discord. If you join the Discord, you can read it in the wrestling chat. Of where like I'll give like a short and sweet version of it.
Yeah.
Of you pair them with Heyman, because it's like I said, like you can have it like as Heyman, like you can center this whole thing around Heyman. Of Heyman's like, no, I'm getting my GM job back. Like if you want to like strain the kayfabe part of like, oh, Heyman was fired as GM, you can have it that he's like, no, I'm getting my fucking job back. And he's like, I will run through this entire roster. It's like there's not a single person on this roster who can beat Roman. And if someone even tries, we have Retribution to beat him down. It's basically have it to where, and even you can have a match of where, like, you can have like Roman versus someone, and like the stipulation could be if Roman wins, Heyman's the GM. And do something along those lines of where it's like, okay, you've instantly made Heyman stable the most important thing on the roster, which then makes Roman subsequently the most important thing on the roster.
So he's on SmackDown fighting for his Raw GM job?
No, like just fighting to be like SmackDown's GM, just like being a GM in general.
Do you think
I'm getting?
Do you think it matters that he was on Raw when he got fired? Like he was running Raw?
I don't think it matters.
Okay, all right.
I think it's basically he's just going to be like, I want a GM job again, because then honestly, like you can try to pull like a whole storyline thing of where it's like anyone who goes to go after Roman for his championship. Obviously, I don't know if people would appreciate this as like booking, like, you can build it up of where it's anyone who challenges Roman has to go through all these massive hurdles.
Yeah.
Kind of like what they did with Kofi Mania.
Mm-hmm.
Of where it's like Kofi had to beat like impossible odds. The New Day had to help him get into that match.
Yeah.
So then, like, obviously, like,
same thing we saw with DB. DB had to jump through hurdles just to get the fucking title when he won.
Yeah, and honestly, if you then want to do it that way, tying back into the whole thing of Matt Riddle being like, I'm not ready, have him run that gauntlet.
Yeah.
Then if you have Matt Riddle beat him, boom, Matt Riddle then is arguably the biggest babyface in the company because he beat the odds. Like, obviously, we at some point we're going to learn who everyone in Retribution is. We already kind of have an idea of who's in it.
Is that your WrestleMania moment? Is Matt Riddle?
I think you build it up for more than a year.
Okay.
My whole thing is,
like,
I honestly...
That's like WrestleMania 2022 then? Or is it not even a WrestleMania moment?
I mean, I think it's a WrestleMania moment. Yeah. I think... Because what I would do for this is start building that part up so then the WrestleMania moment is Heyman as GM and they're like, basically just build it up as like, this is going to be a shit show.
Yeah.
Basically. Of where it's like, fuck, now Roman's biggest advisor runs the show. To where then obviously you have everyone have to run the gauntlet to do anything.
Yeah. To
where then you start building it up that either like, I wouldn't say like Matt Riddle wins the Royal Rumble because obviously Keith Lee goes after, or for whoever would win at that point. That's way too far in fantasy booking for me. That's a whole fucking year past. But like whoever's champion on the Raw side, you have someone win that for Raw. To where then basically you build it up that like Riddle's the challenger. Riddle has to run the gauntlet, and when he gets to Roman, like, for instance, it's kind of also similar a little bit to what they did with Seth Rollins and Brock, of where it was, like, you can have Roman just literally beat the shit out of Matt Riddle for, like, weeks on end.
Yeah.
Like, have him and Retribution beat the shit out of him, and, like, obviously you can have it that, like, if you want to bring Shane McMahon into it, I fucking don't want them to, because I don't want Shane on TV anymore.
Here's my question, and I'm going to throw this out, because we eventually do have to end this. As we're getting over an hour here. With the Paul Heyman thing, does Retribution and Paul Heyman ever coincide with Raw Underground? Because whenever I see Raw Underground, you know what I think of? ECW. I know they're not like cutting people open and hitting people with barbed wire and shit, but it's like, is this supposed to be like a modified version of ECW? Where it's basically like no ring ropes. We're basically beating the shit out of people. And I'm like, could you play that into it? Because Paul Heyman used to be the guy for ECW.
I think you keep Heyman away from that. And it's mostly just so that it's not kind of like almost just rubbing salt in the wound of Heyman having ECW twice.
Yeah.
Of the original ECW and then WWE's ECW. Like, I think you keep him away from that. But to kind of also finish what my thought was for the Retribution thing of, I think what you could do is with the Matt Riddle stuff of where it's like it's almost like someone else like steps in and vies for the GM spot. Like obviously you could have it like he's not actually the GM.
Yeah.
But like they just like name him as the GM. And you could have it that like the old GM backs him and basically gets either Vince McMahon or Shane to be like, hey, if Matt Riddle beats this opponent of Heyman's choosing, that's not Brock, or that's not like Brock or fucking Roman or whoever. Like basically anyone in Retribution is like, if Matt Riddle's able to beat them, Retribution can't be there, and it's slowly dismantled the fact of like slowly break down Roman's defense to where then Roman has to actively be like, no, I'm weakening the shit out of you before that match, and then boom. You don't have to worry about it being like, well, why didn't Retribution intervened in the middle of the match and all that fun stuff. Yeah, that's just a thought I had.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, Retribution, I don't know what to really think of them. Because is it going to be like the Hacker? Is it going to be actually built into something? Like, I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. But you guys let us know what you guys think down below about Soapy's theory and about anything we talked about today. This is a jam-packed wrestling podcast this week. We talked about a lot of stuff. Like I said, didn't expect to have an Asuka conversation, but that sometimes happens here on the MVP Wrestling Podcast. Remember, join the Discord link down below in the description. Great place to talk wrestling with all the real MVPs. Make sure to check out patreon.com/MVP vids, where you can help support the channel, but also you want to get these a week early when they come out this once a month. You can get it a week early by being a gold or above tier member, as I'm a little burpy right now as Soapy had his burps coming out earlier. But that is going to do it for the MVP Wrestling Podcast. I want to thank you guys for giving us over an hour of your time to listen to us talk about wrestling. Again, let us know what you guys think in that comment section. For myself and Soapy, have a good day, everybody.
Bye.